What is up, everyone, at Beyond the Veil? Chris and Sheree Gio here, coming to you from Beyond the Veil. Man, this is going to be information overload part 2 because things just keep happening. If you missed the first show, I left it on YouTube as long as we could. We went ahead and cut that down significantly. You can catch the full show over at patreon.com/BTV Tribe. We've got a lot of new Patreons, so I wanted to say thank you very much for signing up and for checking it all out because as we did before, we're going to get into some stuff that really is on the lines of the terms and conditions here. So we use a few words, code words like vacation and things like that. I won't explain it again. You can watch the last show if you want to. But anyways, we have a ton of stuff to go over because there's a ton of stuff happening in the world right now. Of course, the big thing is the big Twitter dump of all of the internal files showing how they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. All the stuff that Musk has just been just releasing. I mean, in little increments, but it's just amazing. And as he's quoted as saying, if this doesn't constitute erection interference, I'll use that word, then I don't know what does. And I have to agree with him because there was there's clear data showing that the DNC had a portal straight to social media to get anything they wanted removed. Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan and he said that the FBI came and told him to censor particular information as quote-unquote Russian disinformation. The big thing about the Hunter Biden thing is that according to the internal documents that have been leaked or that have been disclosed, I should say, they knew that the hacked thing wasn't going to work in the first 24 hours, but nobody had the balls over at Twitter to reverse that, and they banned the Washington Post, the New York Post, they banned Kayleigh McEnany, they banned a lot of people for sharing very real and legitimate information. Now, somebody had mentioned this the other day, and I didn't know this, but apparently there were 3 laptops that were left in 3 different places, not just one, but there were 3. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, no, I don't know if I believe that or not. Looked it up. Sure enough, there were 3 different laptops that were left at 3 different locations. And just as a refresher, the way it works is if you drop off your laptop at a repair shop and don't pick it up within a certain period of time, it becomes property of the repair shop. And so the repair shop owner tried to give it back to Hunter Biden multiple times. He couldn't get a hold of him. Finally, it became his property and he was able to go through the hard drives and everything like that. But they worked really, really, really hard to suppress that story and everything in it prior to the 2020 elections. Now, Trump is coming out and saying that something needs to be done, that things need to be made right, and even going so far as to suspend the Constitution. I would have agreed with him in 2020, and I think that's what should have been done in 2020, because you have a global pandemic, you have this emergency situation happening, you can't have fair and free erections. You just can't under those circumstances. And there was a lot of room for a lot of fuckery to go on. And sure enough, that's exactly what we saw. And he should have acted at that time. But instead, he let things go by. And now that everything is coming out and there's solid evidence of collusion between big tech and government, because here's the thing. Just to, again, another refresher, the argument before was that these are private companies, and because they're private companies, then they can operate in the way that they want to operate. However, when the government and DOJ have a direct connection and a direct line to be able to censor anybody they want, to be able to remove whatever post they want, blacklist people, so on and so forth, we've probably been put on that list as well. Then it's no longer a private company. Now it is government outsourcing the suppression of constitutional rights, which is free speech. And as Twitter has framed itself, as a town square. And as a lot of pundits have been pointing out lately, if they didn't like the Hunter Biden laptop information, well then they could have left it in the comments and said that they disagreed and so on and so forth. But to ban it under the guise of it being hacked, and according to Twitter's own terms and conditions and internal documents, in order for something to be deemed hacked, a court has to deem name it is hacked.
Mm-hmm.
Not Twitter or anybody like that, but it just goes to show. I think what's happening right now is just, it's extraordinary, because everybody's being vindicated. Like, everybody who stuck to the truth, everybody who kept on speaking their truth, regardless of the shadow banning, regardless of all of that, we're all being vindicated on every single level, whether it's the vacation or the erections or any of that. Unfortunately, we still have to speak in these weird words here, but you all know what I'm talking about. Now, as we talked about in the last show, there's a lot of people just boop, just dropping, and as they drop, we've showed a lot of videos that we had to cut from the YouTube version of people just looking around and just, right before they just crash, just looking around, and more and more and more are happening. As a matter of fact, I have one on my screen that I used in the thumbnail. Actually, I don't have it on my screen anymore, but it was a young girl. Let me see. Let me pull up the thumbnail again. Suddenly an 18-year-old boy just sneezes and then dies as he's walking. Just sneezes and then
Walking with
dies.
his friends
And
night.
there's more and more and more of these happening. Christy Alley just died of quote-unquote cancer. And as we suspected, after you get this thing, you can get a lot of different things that happen really, really, really quick, like cancer being sped up very, very, very fast. We've had family members that unfortunately had that happen to them, and they were gone within a matter of 3 or 4 months after chastising us and calling us Russian disinformation and all kinds of stuff like that, for just speaking the truth and trying to save their lives. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that, but I think we saved a lot of lives out there, and I think you all saved a lot of lives out there as well, by sticking to your truth. So, Cherie, what else are we going to get into?
Oh, it's incredible what's going on right now, because even the famous Dr. Drew, the guy that it does all the interventions for Hollywood, and he's really big into he's a big Hollywood type of doctor. Even he is asking questions now. Wait a second, why is it that people are sneezing and dying that are previously totally healthy young kids? Suddenly this is happening to them. Why is this happening?
When you've got Washington Post reporting that it's no longer a endemic of the unvacationed, now it's an endemic of the vacationed. When Washington Post is reporting it, you know that the numbers have gotten so bad that they have to do something to save face.
Right, yeah.
Likewise, when Dr. Drew, who was a mainstream shill, he was pushing the whole thing the entire time, pushing the narrative. When he's starting to question it now, you know damn sure that it's so big. I mean, if they're giving you a little bit of truth in the mainstream media, you know that it is a iceberg. It is an entire iceberg, and you're just seeing a small portion because they have to try to save face and to try to cover up the rest of the information. I mean, if they put out a little bit of truth, they can try to cover up the rest of it.
That's right.
And people will only be looking at the small little crumbs instead of the whole pie.
Right, exactly. And then also I wanted to get into just for a second the whole Pelosi deal. Now they're saying that they're saying that they're bashing the misinformation about this, but we still don't know who opened the door. There wasn't a third person there, but we still don't know who opened this door. I think this is actually really key here, because this is while they're claiming to do away completely with all the misinformation about this, but they aren't. All they're doing is stating the obvious, that
here's
we don't
the
know
problem.
who opened that door.
Is the local police report. This is the Paul Pelosi situation that happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The local police report says that Paul Pelosi opened the door. He said there was no emergency, and he walked back towards DePape or DePape.
Right.
And the federal report says somebody opened the door, but it doesn't say who.
Right.
Now, I am leaning more towards the local police report because they were there on the scene. Not the federal indictment.
Yeah, same here.
So we've talked about this before. Again, if you're in the Patreon, then you know all about it. They do this. They get these guys and these homeless guys
that are desperate for money.
They pay them for prostitution, and then they pump them up with all kinds of stuff and basically beat them to death, and do all kinds of stuff like that. It's something that they've engaged in. Adam Schiff was engaging in it. We were talking about this 3-4 years ago. So this is just another one of those situations, and it's interesting because there was a hammer involved, and he walked back, and DePape had the hammer in his hand, and Pelosi grabbed the hammer, and then he hit him with the hammer at the time. But Pelosi let DePape in the back door. That's what they're saying now, and the story just keeps on changing and changing and changing. At the very beginning, it was him tied up in a chair, and he happened to call 911, and because of the way he was talking on 911, they were able to read between the lines and get somebody over. Now he's no longer tied up in a chair. Now he's answering the door, and now he's walking back towards DePape, telling the police that everything is okay, and then that's when DePape hits him in the head with a hammer. So
why would DePape hit the guy in the head with a hammer unless he thought the cops were going to be on the bad guy's side on this one? Like, oh my God, you've got these people working for you too. Like
that's probably what he told him.
Oh my God,
yeah. And then the 911 call was released, and I cannot find it anymore. I wish I would have grabbed it when I heard it.
Yeah,
the 911 call says, I'm just having a dispute with a friend.
With an old friend.
There's nothing going on here. The 911 call audio sounded like somebody had called 911, like DePape had called 911. And
he was trying to cover it up.
Yeah, and the phone got hung up, and you know how 911 calls back? That's what it sounded like.
Right.
But they sent somebody out there anyways, and even the local police is saying that they didn't know it was a quote-unquote high-profile case.
They didn't understand who they were.
Whoever responded didn't know that it was Pelosi's house.
Right.
So DePape got really, really, really lucky by getting some cops out there that weren't in on whatever is going on.
Yeah. Oh, whatever pizza-related stuff they have going on down there is it's probably worse than we even could imagine. As bad as it gets, it's probably that bad. However, it's the very rare case that this gets out like this, that we hear anything about this, because Ed Buck was able to go for like 5 or 6 years doing this to people before they finally got involved. And when they did get involved, they had dozens of people coming forward saying, yeah, he tried to kill me. And he tried to kill me, and I barely escaped with my life, and I just haven't told anybody about this until now. But here's the text from me to him. Here's the text from him to me. This is proof that this really did take place. But I'm telling you, that I'm glad I got away with my life.
Right, it's getting crazy.
It's getting crazy.
Anish, thank you, brother.
Hi,
for
guys.
The love. Love you too, man.
Hi, Anish.
It is getting crazy, and like I said, things are happening where people are being taken over, and they're going almost into like this robot mode of like just acting in ways that they wouldn't act, and doing things that they normally wouldn't do.
Something's
and
taking them
all
over.
These people just dropping dead and seeing something first. Dimensions are being the veil between dimensions are being ripped open as these people's soul is being sucked out of them.
And I don't even know if this is relevant. Maybe it is. The murders in Idaho. I think that's relevant to the situation as well. We've got all these people dropping dead in Idaho of cancer. Cancer all over the place. And then you've got these kids that, for no rhyme or reason, there's no rhyme or reason to this. There's no reason, there's no motive, there's no suspect. They have no idea who did this. And now they're admitting, okay, well, we don't think that they were targeted at all. I think they just were at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, here's the crazy thing about that story is that I went to an event, got really, really, really deep into hyperspace, came back and did a 1-hour video about the horrific things I saw. I mean, we're talking about like Hellraiser type stuff. I won't go over it again.
Really bad stuff.
You can go to our Patreon and check it out if you want. But all this stuff started happening, and I said that these people in Idaho, whoever did what they did was possessed for all intents and purposes. But I think it has to do with the vacation. It has to do with the nanobots. It has to do with all of that. It has to do with all the stuff that I was seeing. And they said the murder scene over there was like something out of a horror movie. Like there was so much blood. It's unbelievable. So
They
the
had to use
police,
multiple labs for the blood because there's so much blood. They've had to use multiple labs outside of the area.
It doesn't surprise me.
Process all of
It
it.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
The police were really trying to go after the boyfriend. Really, really, really hardcore, which is suspect. And the parents of one of the girls was like, no, the boyfriend is like family. Leave him alone. He didn't do anything. But they were really trying to pin it on the boyfriend first and foremost. And then they said it was targeted. And then now they can't figure out who it was. And that's what I said. I said, this was a random thing. And we're going to see more and more and more of this happening.
Random acts of just unbelievable.
It's either one of two things. It's either people who have taken the thing and they've got the nanobots in them and they're being activated to go commit all these things. Or I have another perspective. It's people who have come across the border.
There you go.
And
That's
let me
another-
tell you why. There was something that I came across earlier that I'm gonna I think I'm gonna start the show off with. We'll do the intro and then I'll start it off with that, because this is really, really, really disgusting. These are the dreamers coming over here.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have taken a neutral position on this because I have a lot of friends and people who have treated us like family who have come over and they've been here 20, 30 years and they can't get their papers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a big proponent of helping those people get their papers, especially when they have kids here, especially like, you know, we have one friend who had 3 children here and one of them died in the military.
Yeah.
If you give one of your children and they die in the military, I think you should get your papers.
Yeah,
you know,
I
there
think
shouldn't
so
be any
too.
question about that.
Yeah.
But
Especially when you get,
you know,
this-
so there is that perspective. But at the same time, people who are coming across the border now have a completely different mentality.
Oh, yeah, they
and
do.
something very, very, very scary and very reminiscent of Rwanda or the Night of the Long Knives or situations like that. So let me roll the intro and we'll get right into that.
Sounds good.
So far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a pride of a falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I'll be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, Mrs. Gio.
Good morning, everyone.
And this is Information Overload Part 2 because it's coming in so quickly that I don't even know how to cover this. But first of all, before we get into anything, I know you got a ton of stuff that you want to get into. I want to play this little clip here that I was watching earlier because I was absolutely just shocked when I saw this. And there's a couple of questions that I want to pose, and I want you guys and gals in the chat room to let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments as well what you think about this. But this is a report by Tucker Carlson, and it was about protesters who were recently protesting Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk being a right-wing conservative speaker, and they regularly protest his speeches at college campuses. This one looked very, very, very different, though. It looked very different. So first of all, I'll go ahead and play this.
Definitely seen before. A major college campus erupted into violence when someone tried to say things that were not approved by the people in charge, the Biden administration and Apple. That happened last night at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Charlie Kirk visited the campus and riot police had to be deployed. Watch.
Get the off our campus!
Antifa, who are you?
Domestic terrorism!
Reporter.
You're a reporter.
You white cowboy, that's what the he is, right? You coward!
What do you think about the cops?
Cops? You know what I say? American? Americans, especially the cops.
Okay, so I'm going to rewind just a minute
Such
here.
lovely people.
So first of all, according to the Biden administration, Antifa is an idea. They're not a group of people. They're just an idea. So how is this person saying they're Antifa?
Domestic terrorism.
Reporter.
You're a reporter. But who are you?
Get the off our campus.
Antifa, who are you?
Domestic terrorism.
Reporter.
You're a
So now that's the face of Antifa? If you look a little closer too, do any of these people look like college
No,
students?
they don't look like college students. They look like middle-aged people.
They all look middle-aged. I mean, there might be a handful of college students there, but I don't think that there's any college students there. I'm not well versed in communist and socialist garb, so I don't know what these symbols mean here. If somebody can let me know in the chat, please let me know. It seems very much Che Guevara kind of stuff. But do you know about this? Because I don't study socialism
This
or
does
communism.
look like Che Guevara. It looks
I'm
like
too busy making money.
this looks like a mixture of Che Guevara, and the South American revolutions, plus the Nazi brown shirts, plus the Red Terror and what they used to wear back in what the Bolsheviks used to wear back in the early 20th century. That's it. It's an amalgamation of all of these put together, in my opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree with
That's what
you.
it looks like.
These people look middle-aged. Now look at these people. These people are
No,
college students
that
that
looks
are
like
there at
college students.
the.
That looks
I mean,
like
it
a
looks like
college
college
age.
students. It looks college age, but listen to what's
No,
going on.
they're not college.
You know what I say? American. Americans, especially.
Okay, F the people that are taking you in.
F Americans. F Americans. Okay. Now, this has to be propaganda because, like I said, I think the majority of people who come over here are good people.
Yeah.
And they're very hardworking people.
They're like
But
those.
then you get the few like this that come in. So you're telling me that this guy came over here, he got a college education, he's a college student, and his mentality is F Americans.
Right? No, I don't think so.
Would you go to any country, anybody's house, and then say F the people of that country? I mean, in what world does this happen? I guess in the Biden United States of America
I
it
guess
happens.
whenever, yeah. But this is the kind of
So
person
listen.
that.
Americans, especially the cops.
Now, these are the people who are coming across.
Yeah.
And so these aren't college students.
No.
So now all of a sudden we have a whole new picture being painted here. And the question is, who is paying them? Because I have no doubt in my mind that all of these people are paid.
Yeah. Who's getting the money?
They're not college students, and they're there just to create a scene. Who's paying them? I would say it's Soros and all of that.
Oh, it's Soros.
Before, you could question and say, okay, well, maybe it is actually college students because college students are extremely brainwashed. However, none of these look like college students.
Not to me.
And
no.
I don't think college students would say F Americans like that.
No.
Especially people who have come from especially dreamers.
Yeah,
Okay,
people
that's
that
what
come from
Kamala
a
Harris and Biden and
disadvantaged
everybody likes to
state.
call them, the dreamers coming over here.
The
No.
disadvantaged, yeah.
This is MS-13. This is exactly what Trump was talking about when he said you got rapists and all kinds of stuff like that coming through the border.
Oh, that guy would be
This is
happy
exactly
if you gave him a machete and told
what
him to go
they're-
after Americans.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've often speculated if that's why there is such, as people have pointed out in the chat room, an invasion.
It's an invasion.
This is an invasion.
I agree. I totally agree. I can't see it as anything else whenever they're talking the way they're talking and saying the things that they're saying. And even a lot of the news backs them up. If you notice, the narrative seems to be these poor dreamers, they've had it so rough in their home countries. How dare you even think anything badly about them because they're disadvantaged already, and being mean to them just makes them more disadvantaged. I don't believe that for a second. I believe that if you want to come over here, then you should do just as much as we have to do whenever we go to another country. When we go to Europe, don't we have to jump through all sorts of hoops and prove that we're not doing their country harm, especially if you go somewhere, say like even South Korea. if even just going to South Korea for 6 months, you would have to jump through a million different hoops before they would even let you in, and before they would give you a visa that lasted that long.
Yeah.
In the Europe, it's the same thing. They don't let just anybody in. They don't, and this whole thing.
Canada doesn't allow you in if you owe child support.
Exactly. And you compare
Just
that
to visit.
that.
Just to visit.
Yeah, no, even just to visit, you can't even come over if you have any felonies or anything. If you're a bad person, what they consider a bad person in your own country, then they don't want you there. We're the opposite, where we're like, oh, we're taking anybody, especially the people that, want to hurt Americans.
That's because these people are going to be used at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be used.
They're going to be activated
for a civil war.
That is exactly right. That's what I'm most concerned about, is the fact that they seem like they're waiting for something.
So the same people paying them are the same people who are trying to take our guns.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Yeah. But, it wasn't until I saw this that I became firm in my stance that these are not dreamers coming over here for a better life.
No.
Action against the state
I wish they
prosecutor.
were.
I clicked off.
I wish they were. I wish
Here's a
they were
story you had-
dreamers. I wish they were dreamers, and that they were coming here to have a better life.
This says it all.
What do you think about the cops?
Cops? Them. You know what I say? American? Americans. Especially the cops.
There is the poster child for closing the borders.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yep,
That's what
this
I'm
guy has
thinking.
just made himself the poster child for closing the borders.
Mm-hmm. It's time.
Yeah.
If that's what we're letting in, no.
Okay, so
Yeah,
moving on.
Completely agree. So we've got, at least we have the ability to say what we want to say to a certain extent. I mean, we've got a little bit of censorship and all that stuff. However, at least we're allowed to have our own show still. We're allowed to speak pretty openly about things like that. Whereas places like China, they are so locked down right now that they're carrying blank pieces of paper to symbolize they're not allowed to talk about anything.
Oh, I want to make a correction. Last show, I mentioned that they were protesting their right to free speech, which was partly true. What they're actually protesting is the zero zombie virus restrictions that they've put in place. And so I just wanted to add that just for the sake of inclusion.
Okay.
But that's what the main protest is about. It also has to do with the fact with the free speech issue. And as we mentioned, the Apple, I keep calling them AirTags, but I know they're called something else.
Airdrop.
AirDrops. Okay. Apple shut all that down in China, so people couldn't communicate with each other directly. They have to go through government internet and government portals in order to communicate. However, as a result of these protests and as a result of China's zero tolerance policy for the zombie virus, what's happened?
Oh, it's been terrible. They have such an issue in certain places that there was a fire, a house fire, that took off a few days ago. It was about 4 or 5 days ago, and they couldn't respond. Everything was locked down so heavily that the emergency responders couldn't respond fast enough, and as a result, dozens of people are dead now. So and so people are really getting ticked off at the fact that they can't even save themselves now from a fire because of these draconian lockdown conditions. The conditions of this are terrible. They have to stand, regardless of whether it's snowing or raining or whatever. They have to stand outside all day until they get one of those tests that they stick it up your nose, and then they can get a green QR code that they can shop with. Otherwise, they can't shop for their family. They can't get food. They can't do anything. It's awful. It is really, really awful what they're going through right now, and what they're protesting is stuff that we wouldn't need to because we have the Constitution.
I've got this on the screen right here, and these are people waiting in line in the snow
For their tests.
so they can go to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm. That's just so they can shop, just so they can live.
Yeah. And if I can back up for just a moment, because Patrice brought something. These people here, remember, this has been going on in Europe for the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
with all of the refugees going over there to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And remember when we were in Egypt and I said, I want to go to France? And people were like, France isn't the way it used to be.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's really bad. And so I want to apologize, first of all, to all of my brothers and sisters in Europe because I wasn't as sensitive and as conscious to what was going on over the last 5 to 10 years with the
Me
refugees
too.
going over there. I mean, you
I had
know,
no
I
idea.
had no idea how bad it had gotten. I was reading reports, but again, when I read something, I always take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't matter what outlet it comes from.
I agree.
Now that it's hitting home, I have a whole new perspective on it, and I want to say that I understand your plight and I understand what's going on 1,000%
Me
now.
too.
So thank you for bearing with me while I get a good understanding of what's going on, but it seems to be spreading worldwide.
Oh, it's spreading. It's spreading to all of the countries that have something. You know, whether it's they have a slightly good economy, or they have good food, or they have enough for their people. Until you pile on hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of refugees. Once you pile on the refugees, then they don't have that anymore. Does that make sense? You know, they have
and,
until
you know,
they don't have.
If the refugees in Europe were going to Europe and, you know, I don't want to say assimilating because that's not the right word, but
If they were getting along with everybody.
if they were, you know, if their culture was, if they were merging with the culture, you know, all that, becoming active members of the community, which I think a lot are.
A lot of them
you know,
do.
there's a majority of them that are not though. And the biggest plight that I heard from Europe is that the Muslims were trying to go over and push Sharia law in several other places, and we have that here in the United States happening as
yeah,
well.
we do.
There were some courts. I remember one case that happened a couple of years ago where a guy had a child bride, and the case was dropped against him because the judge decided to go by Sharia law. And the U.S. Supreme Court was like, "Oh hell no, 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 no,
we
no,
don't
no,
do that here."
We don't do that here." But the local judge decided to go by Sharia law. So remember that beheading that happened in the UK a couple or like back in 2015 or something like that.
I remember that.
Yeah, we covered that. We showed a lot of inconsistencies and things like that back then. We were working on a film called Crisis Actors: The Evolution of False Flag Terror at the time. But we did a whole expose and breakdown on that. But maybe we were wrong in that analysis. Maybe that was actually a real situation that happened. And maybe these situations are happening more and more and more. I mean, I hear from people in the border states and border cities, and they're having to deal with people literally walking into their houses, and they're having to get private security and all kinds of stuff like that. Because it's one thing if these people are suffering and a country welcomes them and they go in and they start living amongst the people. And I would welcome those kinds of people. You know, I want to help those kind of people. But they're coming over here. I'll just play it again. I don't even have to say it. I'll just play it.
Americans,
Yeah.
especially the cops.
Yeah, that's their attitude, not only here in the States, but throughout the rest of the world.
Yep.
So now we have an invasion. Now we have an enemy that is crossing into our borders, that want to disrupt our way of life, that hate us, So now it's a matter of war. Now it's a matter of and it sucks because I don't want innocent people to get caught up in this, you know? I don't want that, because there are some good people out there, and I don't ever forget that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
There are some good people who come over here because they really want a better life and they really want
That's
help.
right.
And there's some very bad people.
You know,
Very bad people.
Indonesia is dealing with it right this minute. They just passed a criminal code that bans sex outside of marriage. Adultery is now illegal in Indonesia. You cannot have sex outside of marriage. It carries a penalty of up to 1 year in prison. They're saying that the Muslims are the ones that pushed for this legislation, and that it's very, very shocking, and people don't like this. And it's just the fact they've had so many people coming in from Muslim countries that it's taken over their land.
Okay,
So
so
what's going to happen here?
if I can go off on a little tangent here
Handmaid's
for a
Tale.
minute.
Go ahead.
That's exactly where I'm going.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we had Trump come in 2016, 2020, everything seemed good. Now, his latest speech, he was talking about Chinese-style executions for drug dealers. That was a huge red flag.
Huge,
That made
yeah.
me back up and go, okay, this isn't the same guy. We speculated on the last show that he's either being threatened, or perhaps, as some people have said, he's a clone, or the vacation. Once those things get inside of you, then they start to change your reality. Because when you get nanobots infecting the RNA, just like we talked about in the last show, they can actually change your brainwaves. And they can change what you see. And as this thing becomes active, as we speculated on the last show, people who have had this, they could see us, and they can see reptilian demonic monsters ready to come and kill them. And that's what they're seeing, because these nanobots are affecting them like that. Like, that is possible with the technology. And we showed a lot of videos about how this thing, it forms a grid, and it forms a holographic grid. So I don't want to talk too much about that on this show, because you can always go to our last show and check it out.
Of course.
However, one of the things that we've been concerned about is if Trump is part of the agenda, which is really, really sad. I mean, it's really sad if he is.
Disappointing, yeah.
But I don't think he was at the time, because they wouldn't be going after him so much. But something changed. Something changed for sure. But you bring in somebody that seems to be for the people, bring peace and prosperity and all of that. The only place it falls apart for me, though, is the fact that they moved Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030, meaning something got in the way of them implementing Agenda 2030 sometime around 2016, 2017. The only thing I can think of is that Trump got in office.
Right.
And he undid all of that. I mean, he even defunded the WHO.
That's
that only
right.
lasted a few months because Biden came in and undid that.
Redid that funding.
But something happened. Something happened. And I would have been all for him suspending the Constitution and moving the elections back until we could make sure that everything was okay.
Right.
And I'm not talking about martial law. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about some kind of action to postpone things until everything is stable again.
That's
it. Very simple. No impediment on people's individual rights.
Right.
And that's what he's asking for now. He's like, hey, whatever we need to do, we need to make this wrong right. However, what I've been concerned about, especially watching the influx of Muslims and the way Muslims are being held up in the mainstream media. So, for example, you've got CRT and you've got sex ed being taught to children. There are Muslim communities that are going to school board meetings and shutting those school board meetings down by shutting them down, they're getting them to start teaching age-appropriate sex education and getting rid of CRT and stuff like that. So we've speculated and postulated that maybe it was to push it so far left that it's absolutely ridiculous to anybody with a sane mind. I mean, it's hard for me to find anybody that agrees with the left in this day and age. You might be able to find them on Twitter every once in a while, but in real life, I don't see this happening. You may be able to find them in a few college campuses too, but these are brain dead fucking morons. I can go into so many different places from there, but I won't. Let me try to stay on point here. So my point is, what I have been concerned about is swinging the pendulum the complete opposite way and bringing in a theocracy. And if you're holding up Muslims as look at how they're getting rid of CRT, look at how they're doing this, look at how they're doing that, any kind of theocracy and anything less than a separation of church and state is concerning to me, which puts me in a very odd position because I am definitely not on the left. I lean more towards the right, but I'm right in the middle, but I'm definitely not on the far right conservative Christian. And I'll give you a million different reasons as to why, but I won't bore you in this show. However, could the plan be to bring in something so radical, so radically left that nobody can agree with it? Drag Queen Story Hour, for example. Did you hear about what happened?
Oh,
in North Carolina?
No,
in North Carolina? Somebody went and shot up the electric plant in North Carolina, leaving millions of people without electricity And they say that it was because of online rumors that they wanted to stop a drag show from happening that night.
Oh, give me a break.
And the drag show was still able to go on. But if you want to pull that article, pull that article.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
millions
insane.
of people in North Carolina out of electricity, okay? This is just a glimpse of what's to come. If they can go in there and just shoot up an electric plant, which I don't think you can take out an electric plant by shooting it up.
No, I
think
don't
that
think
was just
so
a
either.
cover. I
Yeah.
think they took down that electric grid on purpose. But if they can do stuff like that, people are going to be begging for the other side. People
Oh,
are going
yeah.
to be begging for normalcy. And
Yeah.
instead of normalcy, what we're going to get is tipping it way
Theocracy.
to the other side into theocracy.
Mm-hmm.
And as Handmaid's Tale starts out, first thing they did is there was a population problem, which we're having a population problem right now. We talked
Yep.
about it on the last show, 71% decrease in population growth in Australia. We haven't looked at the numbers in other places, but I'm sure they're similar.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody who's taking this thing is pretty much sterile, in my opinion, unless you got a placebo. You've got the gender stuff going on with the kids, puberty blockers, all that stuff. We're going to have a very, very, very big negative population growth. Second thing they did is got rid of RVW in Handmaid's Tale. And that was the catalyst for them to come in and bring in this Gilead kind of state. And the Gilead state was fucked in and of itself because they were bragging to the world how they lowered their carbon emissions. But the way they lowered their carbon emissions was by systematically killing people and hanging them on walls. Like systematically killing people. So you have less people, so you've lowered your carbon emission by 71%.
Woohoo.
But that's because you've killed everybody off.
You've killed everybody off.
You've killed
yeah.
everybody off. And your main commodity is women.
Is fertile
women.
Yep.
I think we're heading towards
Human
that.
resources,
and I would have
man.
never thought, and my stance up until I saw Trump do that speech about praising China for their drug policy, was that if DeSantis is the real deal, he will step aside, he'll let Trump come in 2024, do his thing, and then DeSantis will take it over after that, if he's the real deal. Now I'm looking at the whole situation like, we're fucked anyway he goes. We're in a lot of fucking trouble.
Regardless.
However, Ron DeSantis released this ad
Oh.
that chills me to the
Oh,
fucking bone. It chills me to the bone.
Yeah.
Because separation of church and state is the most important thing.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
free speech is number one. Right to bear arms is number two. The right to remain silent is number three. The right against unreasonable searches and seizures is number
The
four.
Fourth Amendment, yeah.
And I think number five is the separation of church and state. Like, it's
Yeah.
way up there on the list of priorities.
Yeah.
This is the ad
This
that he
is
recently
sick.
ran.
This is really fucked up.
So I am
I'm
even
sorry.
that much more certain that DeSantis is one of them, that they're trying to bring a Trump-esque like figure, but somebody who can be controlled,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're going to try to swing it in the polar opposite dynamic, which is a theocracy.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a protector. So God made a fighter. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, kiss his family goodbye, travel thousands of miles for no other reason than to serve the people, to save their jobs, their livelihoods, their liberty, their happiness. So God made a fighter. God said, I need someone to be strong, advocate truth in the midst of hysteria, someone who challenges conventional wisdom and isn't afraid to defend what he knows to be right and just. So God made a fighter. God said, I need somebody who will take the arrows, stand firm in the wake of unrelenting attacks, look a mother in the eyes and tell her that her child will be in school. She can keep her job, go to church, eat dinner with friends, and hold the hand of an aging parent taking their breath for the last time.
Okay, so
Okay,
let me
I'm
just
trying not
chime
to
in
throw
on
up.
those couple
Yeah.
of words because, okay, all that could have been said without the religious bullshit.
Without the religious crap.
Because what is he talking about here?
Attacks. Look a mother in the eyes and tell her that her child will be in school. She
look a mother in the eye, tell her that her child will be in school. He did stand up during the whole lockdowns, and he opened the schools back up, and he allowed people to see their dying family, and all that stuff, where everybody else didn't. So he's making that argument there. But why with such a heavy Christian spin to it?
Exactly.
And especially when you look at Christianity, it's a dwindling population, especially with the internet. People are moving away from Christianity, and they're becoming more spiritual than anything. So who's he playing to? Like, who's his target audience here? Because the majority of people are not Christians, and they're not going to vote for an ultra Christian conservative.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. Here's the thing. MAGA and the neocons are both two factions of the Republican Party. However, they're divided factions of the Republican Party.
That's right.
So if Trump is one of them, he very well could have been there just to divide the Republican Party, because he brought in something completely new. I like the MAGA idea. I like everything that he was doing in 2016, 2017, 2018. I like the no wars. I like the removing the EPA regulations so small businesses can get big government contracts. I like the way he did the stock market. I like the way he even ran the economy even during a freaking lockdown. He made a deal with the Federal Reserve for negative interest rates, and that kept everything afloat. And he didn't go spending these crazy spending bills, $7 trillion freaking dollars printed out of thin air in the first 3 months when Biden got in office.
That is insane.
And the prices of everything are just going freaking ridiculous. I mean, everything that I'm buying. I used to get these $5 sandwiches. Yeah. They're $8 now. You go in and get a bucket of chicken. It used to be $25. Now it's $35.
Right.
I mean, it's literally everywhere. But
taking their breath for the last time. So God made a fighter. God said, I need a family man. A man who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his daughter says she wants to spend her life doing what Dad does. So God made a fighter.
Okay, so I don't understand why they couldn't just be, hey, here's what I'm going to do for you.
Right. Why so much of a Christian
insert
slant?
So much religiosity into it? It makes me sick.
Yeah.
And every time they mention God, it's like, ugh,
Because we're moderates for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And that is not going to win the moderates
That's not going to win them over at all.
It's not.
That was very cringe.
Yeah.
And that was so cringeworthy.
And then anybody who's thinking for themselves, Trump talking about China and how great they are for their executions, same-day executions and everything, that is not going to win people over to his base. Him talking about the vacation and how it was a great thing, that's not going to win people over to his base. I'll say it again. When you're president of the United States and you're in the middle of a pandemic, you have to offer a solution.
Right.
Okay? I can excuse that. I can overlook that. I can understand that.
But
continuing that rhetoric after when you don't have to.
Yeah. When it's
that's
obvious.
when you lose me. And then when you go so far as to tie it into China, that's when you lose me.
Yeah.
I completely lost.
Yeah.
Which sucks because now what's our future? Either more of the same from the deep state.
Right.
Or DeSantis.
Which is
uber
Handmaid's
Christian
Tale stuff.
Handmaid's Tale type stuff.
Right.
Or Trump, which is CCP stuff.
Exactly.
We're in a lot of trouble.
Now we don't have any choices. Now our choices are bad, worse, or even worse. And I'm not. I'm really unhappy with the fact that he doesn't seem to know what's going on as far as China's already in hot water with the rest of the world for taking organs out of people that didn't want you taking organs out of them. Like, they're already in trouble for this. Like, how could he not know about this?
Trump is entertaining to watch, as people are saying in the chat room, and that's one of the things that I liked about him.
Yeah.
One of the first things he did is he said, "You are fake news." And he called it right out. And I started cheering, not for him, because I still needed more time, but this was in 2016. I started cheering. And then he doubled down on it, and he said, "Okay, I'm not going to call you fake news. I'm going to call you very fake news." And I was like, yes. And I loved the way that he was calling things out for what they are. He stuck to China virus, despite all the backlash from the mainstream media and all of that. He stuck to what he knew was true. And now it's coming out that it is true, even down to the erections themselves. He stuck to it because he knew it was true. And now Twitter releasing all these documents, he knows it's true. But what happened? What happened?
The black organ market is big business. It is very big business. However, you've got hundreds and hundreds of surgeons all over the world saying there's something wrong here. You would not have this many people, voluntarily giving their organs after this many years of only this many people doing it.
Do you mind if I divert for just a moment?
Please do.
Because it's something that I've really wanted to play on the show for a while, but I haven't, I never have, but I've pointed people to the video. It's a 15-minute video. I don't know how much of it I'm going to play. I might skip through a little bit of it, but this is a video that I did on January 20th, 2017. I just want, for all the naysayers out there, I want, for all the haters out there, even for the BTV tribe out there, I want you to see my perspective on January 20th, 2017, and how it changed, not based on hype, not based on what everybody was saying, but based on what I was actually observing going on with policy and going on around the world. So,
hey everyone, it's Chris Gio of Beyond the Veil. I wanted to take a few moments to offer some commentary regarding Donald Trump, the Trump presidency, and of course today, the day of the inauguration, and why I believe that we're actually on a different timeline. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do is ask you guys some questions. What do you think of Trump? Where do you think we're heading in the next 4 to 8 years? And do you also agree that we're in another timeline? Going back a few months ago, when I saw Trump getting propped up, I thought to myself, well, he must be one of the oligarchy. He must be an insider, because presidents are selected. They're not elected. And this is something that people have known for a long, long time now. However, when I saw the tides turning, and I saw exactly not only how dirty Clinton was, which is something we all knew, but seeing all of her dirt come to the surface. I mean, she has lines of bodies. She has corruption like you can't imagine, child trafficking. She's involved in literally every deplorable thing that you can imagine. I thought to myself, they can't select her because she's just way too dirty. It would be scandal after scandal after scandal. However, with Trump, on the other hand, he seemed completely clean. He was talking about grabbing some pussies. That's the worst that they could dig up on him, which tells me that he's pretty damn clean. But the fact that he got selected makes me wonder if he's an insider or not. But I know one thing for sure is that when Trump got elected, the first thing that I said is, well, it looks like we're on a new timeline. I brought this idea to many different guests on our show, and they all agreed. Yes, I'm feeling a new timeline. So many people are feeling that we're on a new timeline. So the question is, what are we going to do with this new timeline? It's good and bad that we're on a new timeline, because the bad is that we can't foresee this new timeline. At least I can't. And more people that I'm talking to, they agree it's an unknown road that is yet to be traveled. But the old timeline would have led to nuclear war, no doubt about that. And there would have been a huge World War III type catastrophe, and we would have basically a post-apocalyptic war, or a post-apocalyptic world with Clinton in office. We averted that, so we can do whatever we want with this new timeline. It's beautiful. But then again, government in and of itself is inherently evil, just by its very nature, by its very definition. So let me start with the definition of government first. It comes from two words, gubernatio and mente. These are two Latin words, and this is why when you select a governor it's called the gubernatorial races, and it's the gubernatorial office, because that's actually the Latin word for government. Well, gubernatio means to control, or to control the masses or the minds of the masses. Mente means the mind. So government comes from two Latin words, which means to control the mind, or to control the mind of the masses, depending on how you translate the Latin. So just in its very nature, I think to myself, first and foremost, okay, who do I want controlling my mind? Am I going to rally behind Clinton to control my mind? Or am I going to rally behind Trump to control my mind? Or am I going to realize that I'm a sovereign spirit and that I'm going to control my mind and that's it? And every single time, it brings me right back to the idea of anarchy. And anarchy has a very bad connotation to it that a lot of people really don't understand what anarchy is. Well, anarchy is living without rulers. It actually comes from the Greek, without rulers. So again, I apply the same standard. Who do I want ruling me? Do I want Trump ruling me? Do I want Clinton ruling me? Or do I want to rule myself? It always comes back to, I want to rule myself. But with self-governance and autonomous living comes responsibility. Yeah, if I harm somebody on accident or harm somebody's property, then I go and I take care of the situation. I accidentally hit my neighbor's car in the middle of the night. I knocked on his door the next morning and said, hey, I'm very sorry. I accidentally hit your car in the middle of the night as I was pulling into the parking lot. Let me take care of it for you. And I did. I didn't need men with guns to come over to the door and kick the door down and force me to do the right thing. I just did it. And that's what being an anarchist is all about. So back to the idea of government. The idea of government is that you have a group of people that somehow have special rights and special privileges because they wear, in my opinion, what amounts to a Halloween costume. They have guns. So there's another element there that makes the dynamic completely different, because not only do these guys show up in a Halloween costume, but they also show up armed. And the harm that they can commit towards you is very real. In and of itself. But they essentially, it's a group of people that have a license to rob, steal, kill, put you in a cell in a cement block, and demand money from you. If you don't give them the money, then they can kill you, they can put you in that cement block, etc., etc. And this is what government has become, and this is what government has always been from the very beginning, which is why I'm very, very opposed to government. So again, I try to apply these standards. When I take a look, even at somebody like Trump, who very might well be somebody who's on the outside. This could have been a people power revolution that we're watching unfold right now. But government in and of itself is inherently evil. But in the same note, I am not going to go out there and protest about something the government is doing, because that's just feeding into the whole system in and of itself. You got all these people who aren't happy with Trump being in office, who are Clinton supporters, and they're running around creating chaos. I actually read an article on InfoWars the other day that said anarchists are planning to disrupt the elections, or the inauguration. And I was like, no, anarchists aren't planning to do that. Liberal fucktards who think that they need a ruler are doing that. Don't mix us anarchists in with all the bullshit that's going on over there. But anyways, so government is evil in and of itself. So again, when you apply these standards and ask yourself, is Trump going to be a good leader? Is he going to take it to the next level? Is he a leader of the people? It's government in and of itself. It's evil, inherently evil in and of itself. Now,
so it goes on for a little bit longer than that. I don't know what else I said in that video, but I think the message was clear. And I'm glad that I played that, because I needed to remind myself again of the original's perspective. However, something changed. And what changed is when I saw people burning buildings down.
Yeah.
That's when I started to pay attention to Trump. And that's when I started to pay attention to the people of the world as a whole. And I stopped calling myself an anarchist. And the reason for that is because I realize the majority of people are not ready to govern themselves.
That's
the
right.
majority of people out there, they need somebody to govern them. And it's a goddamn shame that the human consciousness is at that point. But I don't think if you watch any of the peaceful but fiery protests out there, that you'll disagree with me on that fact. These people need to be ruled because they can't rule themselves. And all you got to do is go back to that video that I was playing earlier with Tucker Carlson, and you see exactly what I'm talking about. So it's a shame. I think I go on in the video and I acknowledge this and I say, I know we're not ready for that, but if we don't start having this conversation now, we'll never be ready for it.
Right.
But the way I saw businesses being burned to the ground, it shifted my perspective. And while you and I can live without government, most of the BTV tribe out there can live without government. Unfortunately, the majority of people out there cannot. So how do we resolve that? Any thoughts?
There's always going to be this need for some people to be governed, but I don't think that it requires that all of us be governed. It's kind of like this, saying, oh, well, if it's fair, then what's fair is fair. If everybody has their right thumb cut off, then it's fair. No, some people, the point I'm trying to make is that some people, even though some people need to be governed, that doesn't mean they should say everybody has to be governed, full stop, because some of you need to be governed. There's a minority that is always going to do stupid things, or that always is going to do things that end up hurting themselves or whatever. And I think it's a better society when we allow those people to do those things, regardless of how sad it is whenever they mess themselves up. That's sad, yes, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to have their freedom taken away because some people can't be responsible with it.
Well, as people are pointing out in the chat, everything that we saw was staged and paid for by Soros. And as that Tucker Carlson clip earlier showed, it's not college students. It's not. It's people who are paid to go out there and do that.
That's right.
However, if you can find people who are paid to do that, then obviously we're not quite there as a humanity. And it breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. I wish I can go back to the way that I was thinking back then, but I was thinking in a little bit of a bubble. And I think we all have a tendency to do this because we think of things from our own perspective and our own little vantage points here. And I hear a lot of people in the chat, not in the chat, but mostly in the comments, saying, "Hey, why do you care about all this? How this, why this isn't affecting us, et cetera, et cetera." And it's because when you're really tapped in, when you're really higher consciousness, when you tap into your raw consciousness, you don't stop feeling what's going on in the 3D. You feel what's going on in the 3D even more. And when there's suffering and chaos and everything like that, it's no longer about your situation. It's no longer about how you're feeling. Now it's about the world and what's happening on the world stage.
Yeah. Which
is why Beyond the Veil is multidimensional. It's not just, esoteric stuff. It's also 3D stuff because it was esoteric stuff for a brief period of time until I realized that we were being one-dimensional and we're multidimensional beings, not one-dimensional beings. So, where would you like to go from here?
Oh, I think I
can play a quick break if you want to chop it up.
Let's play a quick break, and then when we get back, maybe we can talk about how we're having a division happening in society that's a division of biology. It's not a division of belief anymore. It's a division of, well, this person's biology is this way, and they want to have children, but they can't have children the way they are, and they don't want to have children that are damaged by their biology. So our reproductive resources are going to become a sought after commodity in the near future.
That's true. So as I said in a previous show, sometimes it's nice to see beauty. At on the last show, we played this beautiful song.
Oh yeah, let's do something
where this
pretty.
guy filled up his guitar and played this beautiful melody. And as he filled it up with water, the guitar started to die because it was becoming warped, and that song can only be played one time on that guitar. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful melody. Humor is something that is very, very, very important as we talk about some of these heavier subjects. So we got a ton more information to go over. I don't know if we're going to cut it here for the Patreons or not. It's Greek.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So that's all that matters.
All right. So to wrap it up, we are at 5 hours and a half.
Yes.
We talked about some really deep things as far as the vacation goes. We talked about Fauci. We talked about some really esoteric stuff. We played some exclusive footage from before Egypt and during Egypt that I don't think anybody has seen unless you were tuning into the live stream, which is going to be Patreon exclusive. We had some fun. We played some videos with some otters. We played some funny videos from The Onion. We just sat back. We had a good time. We talked about The Matrix. We talked about NPCs. We talked about AI. We talked about Metatron. We talked about the 13th dimension. We talked about a lot on this show.
Yeah. We talked about so many different things.
A lot of it is going to be cut from YouTube.
YouTube, yes.
So if you want to check out the full show, go to patreon.com/BTVtribe.
Yes.
Anything you want to leave the audience with?
Just that, go to patreon.com because we've got most of the stuff that I would really, really like to watch if I were a listener would be over there. So be sure to go over there.
So kiss the one you love right now. You can never know the last time is going to be. Everybody who's joining us, thank you very much for spending your time with us. As I say always, time is our most precious commodity.
Yes, it is.
And the fact that you have spent it with us means the world to us. So
absolutely.
Love you and see you even further.
Beyond the Veil. Love you guys.
Hey everyone, Chris Geo here. Just wanted to remind you that if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably getting a condensed version of the show. A link is going to pop up here on the left, taking you straight to patreon.com/BTVtribe, where you can get the full shows. It's as little as $3 a month. And the reason is it helps us to overcome the YouTube censorship, the shadow banning, and also stay in touch with our BTV tribe. See you there at